So, number one of thinking critically about the text from the MLK blog, the letter from Birmingham jail, it says, explain the rhetorical situation of the piece, speaker, audience, subject, purpose, and Kairos. So, the speaker of the letter from Birmingham jail is the social rights activist Martin Luther King Jr., or otherwise known as MLK. The intended audience for this letter is MLK's fellow clergy, and later would be the people of the United States. Martin Luther wrote this letter as a response to the criticism he received from individuals regarding his work and ideas. His overall hopes and dreams was to stop segregation and discrimination of African Americans and open the eyes to all Americans that everyone is equal. Number two says to explain what MLK did that was civilly disobedient that landed him in jail. So MLK was arrested in 1963 and sent to Birmingham jail for protesting against racial mistreatment towards blacks. Birmingham, Alabama was one of the many southern unjust states, and MLK felt obligated to pledge his opinion as an activist. Number three, it says to pull two claims out that he makes in his piece using his language, referencing the paragraph number, and explaining the importance of the claim's overall text. So Martin Luther specifies, but more basically, this is in quotes, but more basically, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. This was in paragraph 4, the first sentence. He begins this letter by addressing the first criticism of the individuals. He claims his reasoning for being in Birmingham as an activist and religious leader. He felt the pulling and need to go protest in one of the biggest racial problematic locations, Birmingham, Alabama. This is the second claim. So another important claim MLK states is, or in the letter of Birmingham jail, is in paragraph 24 when he says, first, I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with a white moderate. So he continues to talk about the discrimination that white people put on black people in this time and his strong opinion to open the eyes of the public. That's his strong opinion. He just really wants to open the eyes to the public of his dream and just what he's feeling too. His family feels the exact same. So, number 4, describe 2 rebuttals he addressed and why he addressed it by reading the rebuttal and describing it in your own words, why he felt it was important to address it. So, something MLK did in his writing was state the claims made by his opponents so he could prove against them. That's just like the rebuttal. So, he says, in quotes, you express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws, and this is in paragraph 16. He further unravels that an unjust law is no law at all. Another rebuttal written in the letter is, in quotes, before closing, I feel impelled to mention to one other point in your statement that has troubled me profoundly. You warmly condemned the Birmingham police force, commanded the Birmingham police force for keeping order and preventing violence. That was in 44. The police force are ordered to do their job as calmly and not violently, yet they're allowed to treat blacks with disrespect and cruelty. He did not get that, and he demonstrates the backward law enforcement being used. So, this is a backward law. They're enforcing the law enforcement or the police to do stuff as non-violently as they can, but then they're allowed to treat blacks as horribly and as they can. It's just terrible. So, number 5, make one link between MLK and Henry David. Be sure to use quotes from each and explain how they're related. So both MLK and Henry David both have strong opinions revolving just versus unjust laws. and the difference between the two. Henry David writes his opinion that unjust laws exist. And then in quotes, I said, "Shall we be content to obey them, or shall we endure to amend them and obey them until we succeed, or shall we transgress them at once?" So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to talk, but basically this just states that, like, if there's an unjust law, do we have to obey them? Like, do we have to? And he's basically asking that in a question to bring the audiences to attention, or bring attention to the audience. So, though it is important to, so I'm going to continue. Though it is important to obey laws, people need to be bold and protest for the things they believe in, and that is what is right. MLK puts these thoughts to action when standing up against unjust laws. And then in quotes I said, "Let us consider a more concrete example of just and unjust laws. An unjust law is a code that a numerical or power majority group compels a minority group to obey but does not bind on itself." So MLK is just an example that David was talking about. He's just that example. He's bringing it out and he's showing it as an action. So number 6, it says, "Make one link between MLK and your movement, your research for the service and sacrifice unit of the Daily Challenge PSA." So the main goal, this is what I wrote. The main goal of Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter was to share the seriousness of racial treatment in the U.S. and opening the eyes of the people for possible change. The Daily Challenge PSA relates to the same objective. He's to spread awareness of mental illnesses and showing the public the gravity and seriousness of this illness. In my PSA, I did it on schizophrenia and the stigmas of that, and that is exactly what Martin Luther King's doing. He's trying to bring awareness to this cruelty and trying to get the public to focus on it, to pull it into their minds of how serious it is. So, number 7, it says, "What is MLK's call to action for other civil disobedience?" So, MLK's call to action for the public audience is a key takeaway from the whole letter. This is just something that he wants the audience to just, if you're going to listen to any of what I'm saying, listen to this. And he says, "Unjust anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I think this is such a cool quote. It's so deep. And what he's meaning is to stand up and fight for what you believe in is right. Because we can't, when he says injustice anywhere, there can be injustice anywhere. There can be things that we don't agree with. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It's a threat. We as people need to stand up against it if we have our views and our rights. So I wrote, meaning to stand up and fight for what we believe in is right. Injustice is not tolerable, and your voice can be heard if you stand tall. And I think MLK is just the perfect example of that. If we stand up for what we believe in, we can get what we want. We just need to stand up and be confident, and he's just a perfect example of that. So, yeah, that's my Thinking Critically blog for the MLK, the letter in Birmingham.